Hello, everyone. I have a very special guest with us today. Her name is Amalia, and she's been a ghostwriter for several years now. Amalia, go ahead and tell us about yourself. Are you originally from Kansas City?
No, originally I'm from Minnesota. And then I grew up in LA, and then I moved to Kansas City in 2019 just you know, because it made sense with how I wanted my life to be and what I'm trying to accomplish like as an artist and all that. And so it just made more sense here.
Hmm, very cool. So then what inspired you to become a writer? Was it when you went to LA or when did that happen exactly?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was already inspired to become a writer when I was very young in Minnesota. Like growing up in school, I would make books of my own. Like before I even moved to LA, I would make these little books and I would make stories and then I'd staple them together and I'd draw the pictures for them and then I'd pass them to my classmates and I judged it if it was a good story, if they wanted a second book and they were like, this is great.
Oh, very cute.
Yeah, thank you. So I really fell in love with it there, but then being in LA, I got the chance to be around like-minded people. My favorite thing is being around other artists because they get it. And not that people who aren't artists or aren't writers don't get it, but there are things like, you're willing to do what you need to do to make your dreams happen. And that's kind of, you know,
That's awesome. I mean, definitely makes sense.
yeah.
Everyone in LA, they're chasing their dreams. They're all trying to become the artist. They're all trying to become, the actor or whatever. So that totally makes sense. That would be the average, the normal. You're not crazy to want to do that.
Right, exactly. And the funny thing is they don't think you're crazy here in Kansas City, and that was kind of the nice reason I moved here is because the you know, a lot of people who aren't artists just will admire the fact that you are one, and that's what you do. They're like genuinely like, "Wow, you are a writer? Oh my god, you paint? Like, really?"
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. Well, I'm so happy for you that you kind of went through this journey. It seems like you've been wanting to write your entire life. So that's so cool that you've gone through this journey. You went to LA and then you found that you are an artist. So that's so cool. I actually wanted to know what's the story on that? Like, when did you become more full time as a writer?
Well, I moved here and I met another writer and I became their assistant. And I was mainly just doing like administrative work, like answering emails, handling the Facebook, handling fan stuff and things like that. But I did get a chance to see how how did they work? How was their process of like, because I could always write, pardon me, like I could always write something and it would be beautiful. My ability to write was never in question, but it was always the what do you do when you're done? Like what do you do with this thing when you've written something? What now? And so being in that environment, I could watch and see. Okay, good. Like, what do they do when they're done with their piece? Okay, good. Well, they have an editor they send it to, and then the editor is like, you got to fix this and this. And over here, you said he died, and then over here, he's back to life. And so that doesn't make any sense, and then after you do that, there's this whole like, if you're a self-published writer, there's this whole like process of, okay, we have to like, how do you format your book when you publish it? And all these things you wouldn't necessarily think you have to think about, but like if you're going to self-publish, you have to think about like all these different things. So I got the opportunity to work with this writer, and then he knew I wanted to be a writer as well. So then it was like, well, okay, good. So and then he told me what he needed and wanted and was like, I'm trying to write this and this and this. So,
Yeah.
and I said, great, that's awesome. I'm gonna write that for you. And so then I spent the next month bumping out 50,000 words, and it was on a genre that I normally do not write ever. And it was very like uncomfortable for me at times because I'm like writing something and I look at it and I'm like, this is so stupid. I'm like, oh, I hate this. But then I have to just get into the mindset of like, good, how flexible can I be? How many skill sets can I make? I'm like, good. Okay, this is not what I normally do, but could I do it and be good at it? Let's try. So then I started writing, and I signed an NDA, so I can't say their name or anything, but I wrote something for them and they published it. And they were like, yeah, it got good reviews. And that was great. And I was like, awesome. So we're like, okay, let's do another one. So I think I did two more for them. And that really, and then being their assistant the whole time. And then that kind of really gave me enough knowledge to like, okay, good. I think I could figure this out on my own.
Wow, that's very
Yeah.
cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy that they took you on and they were able to help train you a bit so you can get your feet wet. That's kind of what's needed. You got to get familiar with the entire process. So that's really awesome. Around what time would you say you started doing the writing professionally?
I think since 2020, like 2020, 2021.
Wow, that's really awesome. Well done.
Yeah. Thank you.
So you also said that you've written some of your own books. So then for yourself, what did you have to do to break through and not just be ghostwriting, but put your name out there?
I basically just was like, I'm just going to, cuz we all can be a little bit perfectionisty on our own stuff. And so I decided I'm not going to be perfectionisty. And I picked an idea that I had for like a spooky story that I had when I was 11. And I was like, you know what? If this flops and no one likes it, I'm not going to care. And the purpose of this, like me publishing this first book, the full purpose of it is that I've published a book under my own name. So I wrote it first, got it all out, and then I had a couple of my friends like read it. Like I was like, "Hey, can you read like the first couple chapters?" Who, people who like to read and stuff, and they read it and they were like, "This is actually really good." And I was like, "Oh, thank God." Like amazing.
That's fantastic. Honestly, that's what I do with my clients all the time. We go through and we just get the book written. And that's the thing that I see happens is that they are focusing on how perfect it is. And they kind of go through and they like rewrite the same chapters over and over and over again.
Right.
And it ends up never being finished. And they have all these reasons why, well, if I just did this, then I would have more time or whatever. And da da da. And it just never happens.
Yeah.
Well, that's really awesome, and I'm happy you were able to just push past that, scary feeling of sharing your work because it is really good and should be shared with the world. So I'm glad that you did that.
Thank you.
Now, I wanted to ask you for those authors that haven't published their book and may have a little bit of self consciousness, what would you advise to them to help just push them through that kind of second guessing themselves?
So, one piece of advice that I found from a New York Times illustrator is you treat it like you treat, and this is like very unromantic, but you treat it like you treat work. Like, yes, there is that spark of inspiration and there is that like moment, and you like feel good when you have that moment of like, I'm gonna create blah blah blah. But then sometimes it gets fucking like, oh my God, and you throw the computer or you crumple up your papers or whatever. But you've laid out the story, you've laid it out. All you have to do is just
So then on this next point, I guess this kind of is the same question as the last one, but what would you do to kind of help someone who is wanting to stop writing or do something else and not be full time or not finish the book?
basically what I did is just gritted my teeth and I just finished the first draft. I was like, okay, I already know what happens. This. And the thing is when I finished the first draft of my book, like the last couple chapters, or there were several chapters where it was literally like 2 pages. It's really stupid. It was like, okay. And then I was like, but when I finished the draft, I was like, and thank God. And it felt so good to have a done. Like setting okay, so like obviously you have like a huge target of like publish a book, which is like quite a thing to do and just, and I like to get dones. Like I'm like I want to finish something. I like that accomplishment. So
Yeah.
I had to literally be like, okay, good. So what are some? accomplishments that I can count as accomplishments. I'm like, okay, chapter done. Okay, good. Every chapter I finish, that's like a little yay, pat on my back, woo, or like, finish the first draft, yay, and then I'm like, good, second draft. And what's my target for the second draft? Okay, my target for the second draft was to add more. Like the story I wrote was like there were certain pieces that were very like, ooh, and then there were other pieces that were super dry. What I wanted to do is like add more things that were like, I did research on certain areas that I was writing about. And I was like, what's the lore behind this area? What's like is there myths and legends and like that, like from different cultures? Like, what's the deal? So then I researched that and I got to add it. And as I did that, it kind of brought back my creative like interest in it and go, ooh, this is okay. This is all right.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. You put in the research and it helps build up that interest again for the subject.
Yeah.
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 Now you said also you've had some times where it was very difficult to get your work out and just finish that thing or the next target, and you had to figure out how to get yourself to do it. Do you feel like it would have been easier if maybe you were working with someone that was kind of help pushing you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if I had somebody doing that with me, like given the circumstances over of my life in the last year, I kind of had, I talked to friends about it and they did kind of hold me accountable of like, how's your book going? And just asking me kind of put that pressure. But like prior to me actually starting it, it would have been helpful to have somebody, like, good. So you're going to write a book. Excellent. So this, like, how are you doing on that? Good. Did you finish the first chapter? And even just doing that, like, like, I don't know if this happens with anybody else, but like when we were in school and you get creative writing assignments, I love those. And I would just go nuts. But you have somebody there, you have a teacher who's standing there, literally standing there as you write your paper. And she's like, give it to me. You have 10 minutes. And you're like, okay. Oh my God.
Yep, no choice. You got to do it.
Yeah. Like, I want you to write a story about a skeleton who lost their arm. And you're like, okay, great. And she's like, you have 10 minutes, give me 5 pages. And you're like, okay. Yeah.
So, what's your process? I mean, I have my own process to how I write the book and how I get it started. But what do you usually do?
What I do to get going is I just start. Like, I have the idea, and while the idea is fresh and sparkly in in my mind, I'm like, okay, good. I start writing it. And then I kind of have an idea of where I want to go with that. And then I'll usually, when I'm doing like first draft, it's just get the idea out. Worry about structure, worry about making it good after you finish writing it. But when you're like doing the first draft, it's like what's like just get the cool idea out and then go like, where am I taking this? And go, okay, good. So I want him to fall in love with her, but then she is going to turn into a goose. And then what, but then having at least a couple ideas of what's going to happen later down the line can sometimes pull you along, because then you're sitting there and you're like, I'm telling somebody else's story of how this person went from point A to point B. How did they get there? You know what I mean? Like asking yourself those questions, or like putting yourself like, okay, good. If I was there and I was a little fly on the wall watching this happen, what would happen? I hope that answers your question.
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what I advise my clients, when they're starting a book. I tell them to do exactly that, when they're going through and they're writing their first draft, just to get it out there. Don't think about the characters and the names or any of that stuff. So that's completely
Yeah.
perfect. That's exactly what
Yeah.
I would advise.
And sometimes the guiding point isn't at the end. It's like where the usually my guiding point is the like climax of the book. And it doesn't always tie up the loose ends. The last couple chapters, you can use it for cliffhanger, but you also have to tie up some loose ends. And so that's like that's my process of like first draft writing. And then afterwards, I go back, I clean it up, and I expound on areas that I need to. I'm like, okay, good. I was like, he walked into the room. Great. Like, what did he see? What was the room like? Was it cold?
But we're looking at, okay, we're getting out this book. We're just going to get it out. We're going to let it flow out completely and let it be completely finished. And then we'll look at it again. And we at least know, the end, what's going to happen at the end and what's going to occur there. But we don't have a whole back and forth between what's going on with these little bits and what happened with that piece of wood and all this other stuff. Okay, so if you're writing, then what exactly would you want to get down? Like, what would be too much, and what would be just something that you would just help write in the first draft?
Well, it starts off with like the juicy idea, and the juicy idea, it could be as detailed as I want it to be, but I don't focus on, oh, what was, what should the character's name be? Or where should, like, what should the exact name of this place be? Like, if I don't have it right to hand, I just don't write it. I try to basically, I guess this is a good short answer. The first draft is like, how can you just get out your idea like right now? Like, don't sit and think about it. Don't sit and mull over like, what does it really mean? And like, what are their names and how really should they look? You know what I mean? Like, just go, okay, great. Blah, 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 blah. This is what I'm basically trying to communicate. And then if you have more to say, absolutely say it, but don't get caught up. My The purpose of my first draft was to get it out there, like not getting stuck for any reason. Because I used to get super stuck on like what was their name and like what was the name of the place they're in and like what's what's the like magic lore behind this or something like that as an idea, or like what are their true thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, you just want to basically get out the story before you get stuck in it.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's your job of the first draft isn't to look back and edit it.
Yeah, that's great. That's funny because that's exactly what I advise my clients to do as well. You're not editing. You're not going to go back and edit it. And they like cringe, they really want to edit it. They want to go back and they want to fix it and they want to make the whole thing make sense and they want to make it a beautiful puzzle piece. And it's not ready for that yet. So that's exactly what I communicate all the time. So it's great to hear, you also have had the best experience not doing that.
Yeah. No editing. That's not the job that you're doing when you're writing the first draft. You're like protecting your creative spark in that first draft. In that first draft, you're allowed to say anything you want. And then afterwards, you can look at it with like a more critical eye and go, is this good? Does this need a little cleanup? Right? Will this communicate? But not getting too much into it, just like,
Yeah, that makes sense. Just not destroying the concept by getting into it too much.
yeah.
What would be kind of like the biggest suggestion you would give or advice you would give to a writer who's just trying to start off writing professionally or writing their own book?
I I have a lot of advice, so I'm trying not to just overload you. Like you ask really good questions, and so I'm like, but if someone's just getting started out writing, it's like, don't be too critical of your work, right? You're there to create something, and what do you want to say? And what I find helpful, super random for me, what was always helpful is like I would go into the dictionary or I don't know, like when I look at the definition of a word and then I see like where the word comes from and it's like a new word that I didn't know before, sometimes that inspires like a story. And then I'm like, wow, and I could make a story like this and blah, blah, blah with like, using the word. And I'm like, or like another drill we used to do is like we had a writers group where we would look around and pick like two things, like right now, it'd be like, okay, good. You're going to write about a black door and an abandoned car. I don't care what you write about, but it has to have those two things in it. And then you just sit there and you see, like, what can I create with these two things?
I love that. And also, so I think you touched this up a little bit, but I mean, on professional writing specifically, I feel like there are a lot of writers that really want to get into it professionally, or even people that have kind of just dabbled in it a little bit and they've never thought to professionally go after writing. What would you suggest to them?
Just, do it. Like, one thing I see is like writers, especially friends of mine who've had this passion for writing and they don't do it because, time or this or that or the other thing. And it's like, there's never gonna be time. You're never gonna just like have a perfect moment to do it. You have to sit down and constantly make a moment. It's just like going to the gym, you know?
Yeah.
And there might be moments where you're like, I don't want to do it, but you feel good when you do. And so you just have to have like, it's almost like realizing that there's two jobs. There's like you as a creative, and then the second job is you as a disciplined person, and both work at the writing, and the disciplined person will go, hey, writer, you need to write now, and the writer's like, but I want to watch TV, and you're like, no.
Yeah, you rate that page. Don't you dare sit down on the couch.
Yeah, like, come on, it'll feel good, and then the writer's like, fine, and then you do start to feel good after you do it. Like, it is like going to the gym. Like, you're running, and maybe it sucks, and you have a pain in your lungs, and you're like, oh my God. But then there's a point where you hit that euphoria where you're like, yes, this is amazing. And that you just build those moments on as a writer. You just build your euphoria writer moments.
I love that. That's a beautiful example. Thank you so much, Amalia.
Of
You've been
course.
such an amazing help inspiring these writers to get their book out. And I really appreciate all the advice that you've given today.
Absolutely. It was pleasure being here. I hope that helped, to all your writers. Use the advice. Um and anytime.
Well, thank you so much. I hope that, some of it also really hit home today for those guys at home and that you guys are going to go home right now and write. And, right now, just turn off the video and like go start writing. And if you do need a little help to get a little kick in the butt to get your book done, don't worry, you can definitely contact me. There's a link in the description below. You can go ahead and email me asking any questions that you might have in regards to my coaching. Thanks again, my authors. Good luck and get writing.